All right. Welcome to this episode of Technically Short. I believe this is episode 12.
Yep, episode 12.
Yeah, but today we have last episode you heard from his dad. So we asked his dad who we should have on the podcast. He said, "You should have my son." So say hi, son.
Hi, my name is Son. No, I'm joking. My name is Nathan Miller. Yes, that my dad was on the last episode. Thank you guys for having me on your podcast.
Of course.
Yeah, man. So yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about what you want to talk about, and you specifically brought up anxiety, and you being we were recently earlier before we were figuring out what generation we all were, and and you being Gen Z,
Yes,
and us knowing nothing about Gen Z.
yeah.
So I actually was kind of excited for this because I was like, and you want to talk you want to talk about anxiety. I was like, it would be interesting to hear the culture of anxiety within Generation Z from your perspective.
Yeah.
Before we go into that, I first want to say I want to kind of intro Nathan to really who I perceive him to be, and then we'll go from there. That sound good?
Sounds good.
So the main thing I know about you is that you love to serve, and I specifically think you get that from your dad, because last time when we were at Amplify one time at a team night, your dad came over and they were talking about him running the camera. He was like, "Oh my gosh, I loved it! It was so much fun!"
He was so excited.
And then you came over and they're like, we were talking about running the camera. And you're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be really fun."
I don't even know.
It was like you guys say like almost the exact same thing.
That's funny.
And I also didn't realize until that day how much that you have served or serving on every team.
I serve in serving all the Kidsmen programs, like Kidsmen, J-High, and then like a bit in youth.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget parking lot. I've seen
And
you out
then
there.
I was just gonna get to that. the parking lot, parking cars outside is always a blast as well.
Yeah, and so whenever your dad, I honestly wasn't expecting him to say, "You should have Nathan," but I was like, "Oh, that's a really good idea that I would not have thought of." Like nothing against you, it's just like I just was like, "Huh." I was thinking of people like that were like older than me, or like in the same age, and when he said you, I was like, "That's a really good idea." Yeah, but let's dive into really the main topic. And I don't know how deep this is going to get today. It might get pretty deep. I think we're talking about anxiety, so those conversations tend to go that way. So specifically, I want to ask, and I kind of just made a hard pivot, but maybe I'll get better. Maybe I'll get better at transitions. But with anxiety in Generation Z, what's your perspective of it right now?
I would say in Generation Z, and just specifically, anxiety is a pretty big factor on how most kids live day to day as they go through either school, work, or anything in that topic. I would say it's a pretty big problem right now, because people tend to just push it away, just leave it alone, avoid it at all costs because they don't want to face it, and they don't want to face that problem because they're scared of how it will affect them in a way. I would say our generation is known to. It's not known for the best stuff currently. it's a lot of different things, especially with social media and that whole factor. But based on like anxiety and stuff, it can become a pretty big part of someone's life based on this generation.
Yeah, and like, what about like the current culture? I asked you like specifically like what anxiety is like within Generation Z and like how it affects the culture, but like how does the culture affect the anxiety?
That's a good question. So I guess the culture nowadays is all surrounded by social media, especially. There's a lot of factors to anxiety where, based on just any social media platform, let's say TikTok or Instagram, people put themselves out there just as just thinking they're like almost better than everybody. They try to put themselves over everybody to get either views or likes or anything like that. And I think that the factor it plays towards anxiety is pretty big, considering how people tend to hide away their emotions on social media. They tend to they would like post a photo of them like smiling and caption like best day ever or something like that.
Yeah.
Way to call me out.
Sean's Generation Z at heart.
Honestly. Food. But no, yeah. People tend to do that sometimes. Not targeting Sean. But what they hide and what you really don't know is what's happening behind that photo. You see the photo and you're like, oh, their life's perfect. Oh, their life's going great. But you really don't know what's beyond that photo.
Yeah. And
what's beyond that photo could be a form of anxiety and a form of depression that you don't know about because they just put their life as their happy, perfect lives. But truly, behind that photo, there could be a lot of just pain that you don't know about. So you can never like really, you can never really
tell.
Yeah. Like,
what perspective are you trying to look at it from? Like you can't really tell what they're actually feeling from a picture.
Like you can't really judge based off the photo how they really feel.
Gotcha.
And you can't judge a person based off that because you also don't know what they're going through at that current state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Like that's something that like going into. You do see a lot of social media is used as a mask a lot of the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And like people still like it's not just in Generation Z where people use social media as a highlight reel, and even if the highlights are fake, like you were saying, and because people want them to think they want other people to think that they're okay, that they so that they can get that validation that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that stems into like the if you're looking for that validation and you're having anxiety because you're not thinking this way, but like you don't actually have this thought like, oh, I don't have validation, I need to go on social media and get it. But like at least I don't think so, maybe I'm wrong. but like maybe I'm, but like about Generation Z in general, or like maybe certain people, but like I think the actual thought process seems to more be like they don't feel like they're being valued anywhere else, and they know that how much better they feel whenever they see that those numbers go up on the likes. Or like whenever they see comments of specifically, I think of more of. I mean, I don't know if it is prevalent in guys also with the smiling and the stuff, but like, but like I think of a girl posting like a best day ever, and then all the girls being, "Oh, you're so pretty,
Yeah,
that's so good.
yeah.
Oh my gosh!" Like,
yeah, the comments with that, yeah,
and then that kind of leads into what you were saying, like. Is that then she feels good for that girl feels good for a little bit,
yeah,
and that kind of becomes the addiction. You get addicted to that, like you get those little dopamine hits, and dopamine is an addictive. It can be the way however you get it, like that's going to be an addictive. You can create that thing that's creating the dopamine for you, an addictive drug, essentially. And so social media being that thing that you're being addicted to because of the dopamine that it's giving you, and every time you want to go back to it. Sorry, it went down there a little bit, but like, this is where my mind was going with it. Sean, you have any?
Yeah, I have a question. So, Nathan, when do you first like realize that you were facing anxiety? For me, it was like 19. For you, you're a lot younger. So, when was it like your first like, oh, okay, this is anxiety. This is what I'm facing.
It honestly had to be probably a year ago. Is when I first really started feeling that form of anxiety and depression, and that form of just a bunch of stuff clouding my mind at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Sorry, what age did you say?
Huh?
Did you say an age?
You said last year.
Last year? Okay,
last
sorry.
year, so
Sorry.
14.
Yeah. Okay. And and right now, since it's been a year, and you only go as deep as you want to go, but since you have gone through and are currently you said before you still have bouts of it sometimes, right? What do you do in those moments to overcome it?
That's a good question. So what I really do is, if I've ever like there's forms of anxiety attacks that happen that people also go through, where you just get so tensed up, so stressed that it just fills your mind and you can't think of anything else. I tend to step away. Sometimes I don't know, put on worship music, walk around, just put my mind on God rather than everything else at that time. To really just like overcome that stage is to, rather than focusing on the negative points of your life, try to focus on the positive, because the positive will bring you up rather than knock you down like the negative does.
Mm-hmm. There's actually something really interesting about what you just said, because the part of the brain that, and this is where like I think like kind of you say you think about God and you think about like His goodness, like what He's done, and like God, like He designed us in such a way that like it works so well. Like there's the part in the brain that like where anxiety is created, and like where that anxiety comes from. That's the same exact spot where the feeling of gratitude comes from. You can't feel both at the same time. It's impossible. So if you focus on things that you're grateful for, relative to the things that you're anxious about, your gratitude will actually cause you to stop thinking those anxious thoughts. So if you start thinking like, oh wow, sometimes that might be just, oh, I'm just thankful to be alive. I'm just thankful to have breath in my lungs. Like if that's all you can say at that moment, that's then like just like rehash that, because sometimes that, like, maybe there's probably more things, but if that's the only thing you can think of in the moment, then that's all you can think of in the moment. And you're like, okay, but like, then you're like, oh, then you can be like, thankful for my friends. I'm thankful for everything else God has done in my life. I'm thankful for, like, I won't go, like, I keep saying things, but like, but I think that's a great practice, like having a practice of gratitude, relative to just, and this is advice for everybody, but like, having a practice of gratitude. Like, I think I've heard people say, like Pastor Brandon has said it before. I've heard other people say it, that having a gratitude journal and having a general practice of writing down what you're thankful for every single night. If you have a problem, especially if you have a problem where, like, you acknowledge that maybe I'm not as grateful for the things that I have as I could be, or maybe but the more you do it, like, the more things you're actually going to come up with that you're grateful for, and the more grateful you're going to feel throughout the day, and it gives you more things to think about when you're anxious. Because anxiety, I don't think it's ever really going to go away. It's something that like, it comes with life, right?
Yeah.
But like, the practices that you instill in yourself, and the more you grow those certain muscles in your mind, like, that will distill, like, what the actual end outcome is through, like, an anxiety attack. If you have an anxiety attack, like, what's the end outcome going to be? Is it going to be, like, depression? Like, going to be sad and, like, just sad for being sad? Me, I would get mad at myself for being like, man, I just did nothing all day because I couldn't, and now I feel like crap. And then it was like, but on the flip side, it's like, oh, I'm anxious. Let me, like, I've seen I've been seeing a therapist for over a year, and like, she gave me so many tools to be like, do you pray, meditate, do like focusing on just some white noise, like some things that would take your mind off things. Like, there are so many things that, like, anybody can practice, and the younger you start it, especially with essentially the pandemic of anxiety that is happening within your generation, the sooner you start that practice, like, the better it's going to be for later down the road. Because especially I think the younger you are, whenever you experience this, experience anxiety, the longer it's actually going to last. Your brain's still developing. Yeah, you don't finish develop your guys. We don't stop developing until 25. So especially this for girls, guys, men and women. But like, yeah, the younger you are, the more it's important for everybody. But the more important it is that you start now, relative to later. And that's to the listeners specifically. If we have any other Gen Z people listening.
I feel like, sorry not to cut you off, G, but I feel like anxiety happens not even just for Gen Z, right? For millennials and baby boomers and all the millennials and every generation, right? But it's been a problem since the beginning of time. Because if you look, like, David faced anxiety. And one of the scriptures I was looking up is 1 Peter 5. Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety onto him, because he cares for you. Be self-controlled and alert. So that's 1 Peter, verse 5, right? And I wanted to mention it because I felt like it was so powerful to realize, like, hey, this isn't something you're just facing, right? Because there's power in numbers, but there's even more power in the two things that you did say, Thomas, and you also said, Nathan, right? Which is, the first thing I would say is thankfulness, right? Gratitude. The second thing was worship music. That is so powerful because it's getting your eyes off of yourself and your problems. You're making your problems small, and you're realizing how good and how big God is. So that's, like, magnificent, because if you magnify God, the problems get smaller and smaller, and then you get less stress, and then the anxiety just leaves. So it's so important.
And to the listeners out there that might not be in a Christian point of view, people tend to, that are not Christians, they don't really have a relationship with God. So they take it to other things, that including social media, which is a big part of Gen Z. And that's where most of Gen Z now takes it nowadays. Rather than taking it to God, they take it to, I know vaping's a big thing. They take it to just drugs, because they feel like it relieves their stress. It gives them a peace in the moment. But the key word is for a moment, because as soon as that feeling of, I don't know, highness or whatever goes away, what do they do now? They just don't have like that. The stress comes back. Yeah. And it might come back even stronger because of the things that they're taking in their body. And it really affects how a lot of people deal with their emotions nowadays. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of struggle. It's not always going to be easy to like get away from it. Obviously, it's going to come back eventually. Yeah. But in that time, instead of just taking it to those pain relievers, those stressful moments, really just honestly just read the Bible. I know for non-Christians out there, it might sound like, oh, the Bible, it's just like some stories or just some words in a book. But no, it's really just stories of real people that have dealt with things similar to how we deal with life nowadays. And it's really just it's a stress reliever rather than taking it to stuff that can hurt your body. Take it to stuff that you can gain knowledge, and you can gain strength, and you can just become a better person in mental health or just any topic really. The Bible has it there, and it was put there for a reason. And yeah,
that's good, man. It's really good. I like that you specified that to people that aren't people of faith. And because we do like to say like this podcast isn't specifically just for Christians, even though we are Christians and we bring up God a lot. Yeah. Like we don't put this podcast out there as a Christian podcast. Because then the algorithm would read it that way. Yeah. And to the people that are listening, like Nathan was saying, that aren't necessarily Christians, and you maybe still don't fully understand what we're talking about, that's okay. I think the idea of like you said one thing of like we already said, like anxiety is going to come back, but that's not to be like, what's the word I was thinking? That's not to be discouragement. That's not to be discouraging. Like the point is to be encouraging about it, because even though it will come back, it won't come back as strong if you actually practice those practices of gratitude, or if you look into what we're talking about the word. Like, don't just take our word for it and think that we're just dumb for thinking and believing that God exists. Like, do some of your own research and like understand why we're saying what we're saying. And like, it's, we've all had experience with anxiety, and like anxiety. I've had depression. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's like,
yeah, they're like brothers.
Like
it's like a bond. You don't get one without the other.
And like, man, my train of thought just crashed. Oh man, no, what was I saying?
about depression and anxiety.
But yeah.
Depression. You're leaning into that, and then
I was specifically talking about, like, sorry, I have to backtrack if we don't edit, so this is all going to be in it. But no, I was specifically talking about the anxiety, going through anxiety, and depression, and I know where I think we can all. I don't think, Nathan, I don't know if you I feel like you're growing up in faith a lot younger than I did. I was raised Roman Catholic, but like the faith I have now is a lot stronger than what it was then. And whenever I was going through depression and anxiety, like in the start of it at least, I wasn't close to God, and that was the hardest time through it. And those are the hardest moments in my life, and now with like the medical condition I have, I've had so much stress around this, but I can honestly say I don't think anxiety's come up. Like it's like stress and anxiety is like two different things, and like anxiety, anxiety is specifically like the worry about something that may happen in the future, or it's fear. That's what we should really call it. It's fear about something that may happen in the future, and whether it is actually going to happen or not. And with stress, it's like you're stressed about what's happening right now. You're worried about what's happening right now, or something that you like. And anxiety can bring stress, but anxiety can bring stress, but stress does not exactly become coupled with anxiety. But that I'm jumping down to a different rabbit hole that I realize I'm going to pull myself back. But I don't know, I think with the people if you're going through it right now, regardless of whether you're of faith or not, just think about just take a second to think about what you're thankful for. And I know for a fact what I said about the way your brain is created is true. So if you start thinking about the things that you're grateful for, your anxiety will start to like bump down in numbers. I was trying to think of it as a dial. But sure. But like, actually, dissipate. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
All right.
Took me a second to understand. To get the word. But I want to bring up something else. You mentioned about like vaping.
Yes.
And that being like the go-to for, like, it's probably that or cigarettes or whatever. I don't know if cigarettes are big, but with you guys, but it's more vaping.
It's more vaping, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, yeah. Cigarettes were like more our age, I guess. That makes sense. But like that was used for the same reason. And like the vaping is like the quote unquote the healthier alternative, even though it's not. Yes. It's actually worse. But but all that is, like you say, it's a temporary fix. It's like you're putting a Band-Aid on a gouge in your arm.
Yeah. And
really what you need is surgery. And like the only way like you can either sit there and try to do the surgery yourself, or you can go and seek help. And it takes a lot to admit to yourself that you need it. And then it takes even more to admit to other people that you need it. But if you're actually in it and you're in anxiety or in depression, like that's the route you need to go. That's the only, like you're not going to get out of it by yourself, because all your brain knows right now is how to be anxious. And like it's been rolling on that roller coaster for a while, and it's going to be harder to get off if you don't have somebody pushing you.
Yeah. You always need someone by your side. If you try to attack it alone, it's only just the devil and the enemy is just gonna try to just come at you at different angles, different moments, and try to knock you down.
Yeah.
But if you really find just a therapist, really someone to talk to about it, or just a friend who really can help you that you trust.
Yeah.
They can check in with you, just like how your day is going, how you're feeling, and all that. And you're not alone. You're not alone out there. There is people out there to help.
Yes.
You might not think so. You might think, "Oh, I can do this on my own. I'll be fine." But no, really, just try to find somebody that can help you through this, because without that person to guide you, you don't have anything else to lean on.
Yeah.
So it goes back to, as vaping, you lean on that. You lean on an object rather than a person.
Yeah.
You lean on something that will make you feel good in the moment, but end up hurting you in the end, rather than going to a person who can help you, just go to a person who's not going to judge you. Go to a person you trust that's not going to make you feel any less of yourself in that current moment, and really just have that mindset of just I lost my train of thought there.
No worries, man. It happens, obviously. It happens to me all the time. Do you care if I pivot it?
Sure.
Okay. I what? Unless you want to, do you know where you're at? Or I can pivot it.
You can pivot.
Okay.
Sean, have anything?
Do you have anything?
No, I thought it was really good and excited for the methods. I would just tell people who are facing anxiety to first think about being grateful, and second, try to find some way of easing your mind, whether that's worship music, exercise, or something that you're able to physically do or hear or anything like that that would calm your mind.
Yeah. And then my last question is, this would be my last question. I had to decide. So you have your therapist right now.
Yeah.
Man, I have another question. We'll see. Further, I'll ask, how did you find your therapist?
Honestly, just the amount of stuff that was happening in my life recently.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to my parents and straight up just said I might need a therapist, and my dad went out there and found a Christian therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know if they're currently accepting new applicants? Do you know if your therapist is currently accepting new people?
I would assume so.
Okay.
I've just started going.
Okay. Sorry.
So this is a recent thing. No, you're good.
That was just for the link. That way we can if they are, we can go.
Yeah, we'll get that from you later.
Yeah, you can probably get it from that.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have her name?
It's
sorry. My therapist is a woman. I don't know why I thought.
His name's Isaac.
Isaac. Okay. Yeah, we'll get that. We'll get the information from your dad later, and we'll post that in the show notes. To try and I have a couple other resources too. I'll post in there.
I feel like we need, pivot.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So earlier we were talking about mental health, and how that's a big part of just everybody now.
Mm.
And we started to talk about money-wise for therapy,
mm-hmm.
and how that could be a disadvantage of getting to therapy.
Yeah. Good point.
And just, I don't know how it's going to take that time, but it's just a really big problem is mental health nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like everybody should be going to therapy.
I agree.
But there's also that money problem that takes you to get to that therapist.
Yeah.
I would say, like, not to get political or anything, but like, I wish like, now, like, therapy could be like more of a free place rather than something you have to pay money to go to. Because those people that might not have enough money for therapy,
mm-hmm.
I don't know where they take it. Because if they're not going to get that therapy because of the money, where would they take it afterwards?
You got something? I was about to say, I got something.
Good.
Well, I know that, like, if you don't have money for therapy, I would say try to find your local church. Most churches have something where they have, like, some type of counseling for free that you're able to release what's going on mentally with you. You know what I mean? Because if it's a good church, they're going to have resources where they're able to help people. And if they can't do it themselves, they're going to at least be able to try to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It kind of goes off. I was going on that same vine of, if you can't afford therapy, if your family, if you're a teenager and your parents can't afford it, like, where do you go? You find a good community. And you find a good community with people that you trust if you don't already have that. And by a good community, I mean it's people that aren't anxious also. But that aren't always anxiety ridden, where you don't sit around and talk about how anxious you are and you validate each other's anxiety. No, it's like you actually find a good community where people can speak life into you. And that, by that, I mean what it means to speak life into somebody. Because I know I wouldn't know what that meant if I said that like 5 years, said that myself a few years ago. But like, to speak life into somebody means they're actually like, they're lifting you up out of the pit by hope that you tell them, like you like kind of like Sean said, you can find a church where there are people that would sit down and talk with you.
Or for more of my generation, pretty sure they have counseling or therapy in schools nowadays.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if that's for free though. So maybe if you're looking for, if whoever's watching or listening is looking for a way to get therapy, and they're in my generation or they're still in school, try to reach out to, like, we each have like a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like school therapy could be an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was really good. That's something I wouldn't have thought of. But that's why we're here to talk about it.
Good stuff.
I think like pretty close to wrapping up. But I feel like we covered a lot of great content. I think we covered a lot of great things. And okay, here's my final question. Maybe final. We'll see if this. We'll see. Okay, there'll be another one, but like it's off the topic. But say you're speaking to somebody that is going through anxiety right now, and they're in the deep of it. Like, if you're talking directly to them, what would you say?
Man, I would specifically focus on that season of their life and that point. Through that season of anxiety and that season where you're going through that, just try to tell them, try to maybe have them focus on that God has put trials out there for you, but He's only put those trials out there for you because He knows you can overcome them.
Yeah.
He wouldn't put a trial that you couldn't overcome just to knock you back down.
Yeah.
He would put one that He knows that you can overcome in that moment. And I'd really just focus on that there's joy. There's a season of joy after that season of anxiety.
Yeah.
There's a season of happiness. There's a season of where you're just not stressful, where everything is going great. Not to say that there's still not bad stuff in that season of joy, but there's more things that you can focus on that are more joyful and more just uplifting in that point. I would say also for people that are going through that right now, just try to find, as we were talking about, a community that will build you up, not break you down.
Yeah.
A community that will love you no matter what your circumstances is, no matter your background, no matter your position, and no matter just anything in that topic. And I would also like to a bit of a shout out. So if you're in my generation, at Amplify Church, the church we go to, there's a youth ministry where high schoolers come together, and that's a really good way of finding that community. So anybody out there listening who knows a high schooler out there who just is looking for a way to get community, or just bring it up to them, even if they're not looking for a way to get community, but they're going through something, I would recommend inviting them to a youth, either at city campus, south, east, just everywhere in those campuses.
Yeah.
It's a really good way to build community in that moment.
That's great. No. And I'll link their link the Instagram in the show notes as well. That way you can you'll be able to find it. You won't have to search for it. And we don't usually do this, but since we talked about community a lot, we've been talking about a lot in other episodes too. I'll link Amplify Church as well, just their website and maybe their Instagram as well. We don't do that. I've never done that before, but I feel like this off the conversation today. It's just, like, if we are talking to people that are anxious, and you need a good community, this is the place to get it. And if you're not around here, and you're not somewhere near Pittsburgh, there are definitely other churches.
Yeah, there's I just by scrolling through Instagram sometimes, I just, based on the algorithm that I have, there's just other youth groups just all over the world that people could just be taking advantage of with community. Yeah, I believe we have people listening, at least listen to most episodes in Belgium. And in, I can't remember the exact city, but in Canada. There's a couple people in both spots, at least. But you said around the world. So I was just yeah, there's stuff in Canada. There's stuff in Belgium. Yeah, there has to be.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of churches that you could be just going to. There's a lot of youth opportunities as well there.
Yep.
At those churches that you might not know about.
Yeah. That's really good. Okay. I think that's a really good ending spot. Unless you had any final remarks, Sean?
Nah, I know final remarks here.
Okay. Awesome. No, I really like that. I always like these.
I have my analogy.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
Yeah. Nathan has an analogy.
I have an analogy. So, it was actually from my Christian therapist that I've been going to. Basically, he was talking about a difference between anger and anxiety and depression.
Okay.
And it was a tea kettle with boiling water. When you're angry, that when you're boiling that water in that tea kettle, if you leave it there for a while, it explodes.
Mm-hmm.
And you get that anger, and you just attack everything around you.
Yeah.
While with anxiety and depression, let's say you put eggs in it, just anything that, just go for eggs for this example. That if you leave it on there and you do the same thing, it just starts to spread around the water, starts to become more murky, and over time it starts to stink. And I would say that's a way of that depression just sitting there in your body, just sitting there, and over time it just starts to attack you and try to bring you down. And
wow, that is really good.
That's the analogy.
Man, that's where we're ending it. Wow. If you liked his analogy, you should let us know on Spotify in the comment there. And okay, so I think that was a really great episode. If the people listening, if you like this episode, definitely feel free to give us a review.
5 stars.
5 stars on iTunes or Spotify or any other platform that you're listening on that you can review on. If you're on Spotify, let us know how much you like this episode. I believe I'll have a question on there this time that will ask specifically who you would like to hear on the podcast as a guest. And also, I believe on a podcast, if you can review, you can leave a whole comment about what you think of the podcast as a whole. So definitely go ahead and do that. You share it on share it on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever you use. And we really appreciate it. We're slowly growing, slowly reaching more people, and I think that's how it's meant to go. But Nathan, you got one more thing?
I was just gonna say, I know everybody out there has social media, so there's gonna be a way. Either, as you said, like Twitter or X or Instagram. I know. Just everybody has social media nowadays.
Especially you Gen Z kids.
Yeah.
But Nathan, one final question for you.
Yes.
Alrighty, if you could...
Final question.
This is the final question. Who would you like to hear on an episode of this podcast?
Who would I like to hear? You know what? Luke Marasco.
Okay.
I'll call it Luke Marasco.
Okay, yeah.
That would be good. I feel like that would be good. Yeah. He has a lot of wisdom.
We'll reach out to him. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And again, to everybody, thank you if you listened to this far through the episode. I know that a lot of people are trying to drop off the last 10 seconds. But all right, guys. We will see you later. See you next week.
Love you guys.
See ya.